Hi, my name is Matthew Rocknich, Developer Evangelist at DocuSign. I'm here today with Larry Kluger, who's a former product manager, program manager, and now lead Developer Evangelist at DocuSign. Larry, welcome to the team.
Thank you, Matt.
So Larry, we've known each other for quite some time, but for the interest of the viewers, can you talk a bit about your background?
So I've been in tech for quite a while now. I started off as an engineer doing software for Xerox in Palo Alto. After that, I worked for Sun Microsystems. I was working in England as their software product marketing manager. And then I was at Remedy and some other companies, and now I'm here at DocuSign. It's great to be here.
Great. So in your new role as lead developer evangelist, what is your main focus?
My focus is to help out our developers. So that includes a number of different projects, including the tracking to make sure that our developers' questions are answered on Stack Overflow, helping you and our colleagues out at trade show events, writing blog posts, continuing my work with examples, all these different projects to help developer community.
Sounds great. So you've been at DocuSign for roughly 4 years. What's that one thing that gets you out of bed every day to get to work?
So what I love about DocuSign is how our customers love DocuSign.
Yeah.
And that includes our IT customers who develop new software that integrates with our software.
Right.
And I enjoy working with them. They build great integrations with our software, and it's fantastic to help them out.
So Larry, in your past role, you spent quite a bit of time working on code examples and sample apps. Rumor has it that today you're going to be talking about one of your newest projects, the Code Example Launcher. Is that correct?
Correct rumor, yes.
Excellent. Can you talk a bit about what that is? What is the Code Example Launcher?
Sure. So I worked on the examples over the past year that I did over 14 or more for each of our major languages. And I realized as I was working on them that we needed to have a framework to run the examples. Mm-hmm. So for each of our languages, for C#, PHP, Python, Node, Java, and Ruby, we wanted to have not just the examples, but also a way of running the examples, and that's what the code launchers do. In addition to running the examples, the code launcher serves as an example of how to do authorization code grant, which is the OAuth technique that we recommend when someone is there present, when a user is present. Right. And finally, the launchers enable us to easily add new workflow examples, and we plan to have many more coming over this year and into the future.
Love it. So which frameworks, libraries, etc. did you use to build your launchers?
Right, good question. So what we did is we looked for each software language, we look to see what's a commonly used software stack that's well supported and has the features that we want, and most importantly is popular. So for C#, we used C#.NET Core MVC, which is what's recommended by Microsoft for a web app that you build that you newly build these days. For Node.js, we're using Express, which is a very commonly used web system for Node.js software. For Ruby, it was easy. That's Ruby on Rails. So we use these different stacks. And then for each stack, we also look to see which would be a good library to use to demonstrate how to do OAuth authorization code grant. To start again with C#, the C#.NET Core MVC platform includes what they call security library that supports OAuth, so we used that. With Java, we used what's called Spring Boot as the framework, and that has as an optional component what's called Spring Boot Security, and that supplies the OAuth. For Node.js, we use a very popular library called Passport. So we put all these things together so that these sample applications and the launchers are not just ready to use, but also ready to be run. So they include what's called the package configuration files, so that the SDK and other libraries are pulled in automatically, and all is ready to work right out of the box for the developer.
Great. So can we see an example of the PHP code launcher live?
My pleasure.
Excellent. Let's do it.
Okay, Matt, so what we're going to do is the PHP Authorization Grant Launcher. We've started here on the DocuSign page of GitHub. You can see the URL right here. And this lists all of our different repositories. The easiest way to find the right one is to put it here under Find a Repository. So the EG-03 are the launchers that we want to focus on. And you can see there's 7 of them. Now we may be renaming them in the future, in which case, again, you'll look here, you'll get the right name. The one we want is PHP, so it's down here. So we just click on that. Here's all the information and also the README. What I'm going to do is really go through the README step by step, and so you'll see exactly how we install it, configure it, and get it running. So the first part of the README is talking simply about an introduction and all the different examples that it includes. It includes the authentication with DocuSign via authorization code grant, and then includes these numbered workflow examples 1 through 18. So then we move on to the installation steps, and the first thing is you need a DocuSign Developer Sandbox. I have one of those. A DocuSign integration key, and I'm going to show how to create that. And then in particular, the integration key needs what's called a redirect URI, and that's what this is talking about here. And I want to talk about that very carefully about each step that we go through. The issue with the redirect URI is that we need to understand what is the application URL of the launcher once we have it installed in our system. And I'm going to be running it locally here, and so I'm going to go through this step by step. And in particular, what is the public directory of the example. So I've made a little chart, and on my computer I've set things up so that HTTP localhost is the same as the internal file location of users Larry Kluger www. But how you have your web server set up on your own development machine might be different. But you can see that localhost is what matches up with www. So then I'm going to install the example as on the www directory as EG-03 PHP auth grant on the www directory. And then the public directory of the example is simply the public part, so I add /public. So now we're at this point here, this whole row here. So then we need to figure out what's going to be the URL for, in particular, the public directory. And what we do is we put the 2 parts together. So localhost, remember, corresponds to up through the www, and then all this next part, then we add on to the URL, EG-03 PHP auth grant /public. So therefore, remember back the README told me that we need the redirect URI to be index.php ds_callback. And so then that means that the entire redirect URI, that's this magic thing that we need for the integration key, is going to be this long thing right here. So now that we have that, we can create the integration key. So the way we create the integration key is we go to DocuSign, and here we are. I'm logged into DocuSign. We go to the admin tool, just like that. And then on the bottom left side, we're going to go to the API and keys. That's down over here, API and keys. We click that. Now, I've already got the integration key created. It's, in fact, this first one. And so if I now edit it, we can see here's the integration key, and here are the redirect URIs, including right here, this is the one we just discussed, localhost /EG-03 PHP authorization auth code grant /public /index page equals ds callback. So that's what the README, that's what we figured out from the combination of the README and my own particular installation of a web browser, a web server, sorry, on this machine. We also have the secret key. I have the full secret key. This is just showing the last 4 digits of it. And this key pair stuff is not needed for authorization code grant. Okay, so let's go back now and look again at the README. And we've got this taken care of. We've got PHP. We know the name of a signer, all that good stuff. So now we're at the installation steps. So what we're going to do is download or clone this repository to my, in this case, to my local machine that I'm using for development. The way we do that is we go all the way to the top of the page and click clone or download. And I'm going to just say open in desktop. And I'm going to clone again, and it's done that now. So now it's been downloaded to my local machine. I could have, as an alternative, I could have downloaded the zip file and unzipped it. I just used GitHub Desktop. Okay, so the next step, if we again go down into our README into the installation steps right here, is that I need to run Composer install. And that's using the package manager that's commonly used with PHP to install all the dependencies. So we go into our terminal window, and we go to eg-03-php. There we go. And then we're going to do Composer install. And this is pulling in all the libraries that are needed. In this case, it's as it says here, it's loading from cache. But the first time, what will happen is it'll load from the network, from various sources, file servers out there on the internet. And this all happens automatically. And in particular, it also loads the DocuSign SDK. So everything is all taken care of for us. Okay, let's see what the next steps are. Next is to update the file dsconfig with the integration key and all the other settings. So let's look at that. We will open up an editor. I'll use this one. And we want to say open. And then we want to go to www and PHP. There we go. We open that. And let's look at what we've got here. So this is, I'm looking at the dsconfig file. This is the way it comes from when you download it. Let me make it a little bit bigger. And what you're going to do is replace all of this with the client ID, with the client secret, all that kind of stuff. Right here, the app URL is going to be the URL of the application of the public directory. And remember we figured that out earlier. And when you update these values, you don't want to leave the curly braces. So this would become http://localhost, etc. as we figured out. Now, as they say on the cooking shows, I happen to have one that's already prepared, and so I'm just going to copy that because it's a lot of settings. So I'm going to copy, I call it credentials, and then PHP, and the dsconfig that's there. I'm going to copy it to where we are right now. And so now that that's all been updated, let's see what's next. The web server in our case is all set up, so it'll serve the files that are in the public directory. And remember that you had to set the integration key with the redirect URI, so we've already done that. So now let's test it out. So we go to localhost, and let me refresh the page. And remember, on my development machine, I'm looking at PHP auth code right here. So if we look at that, then we want to look at the public directory, which is the actual location where a user would come to look at the front page of the launcher. So the good news is everything worked. Here we are, the front page of the launcher. And the way this works, I thought that I was logged in, I guess from previously running it. So this is the way it will normally look. It says welcome, and then it lists all the different examples. So we don't have time to go through all of them. I want to just point out maybe one or two of them. So the first one that I'll show is very popular, and that's embedded signing ceremony. So I do that by just clicking here, and I'm being asked to authenticate. So I click like that, and I'm now completely authenticated. The reason I was authenticated automatically like that is I was already logged into DocuSign on another tab. I can demonstrate how that would work if I was not logged in. So here I am on my DocuSign tab. Remember, we were using the admin tool. So I've logged out there, and now here we are. Let's try this again. Embedded signing ceremony. It asks me to authenticate, and this time it asks me to log in because I'm not logged in on a different tab. So I log in. Now here at DocuSign, we use single sign-on, so that's what we call use company login. And so that'll go through our single sign-on system. So now, again, we're authenticated with DocuSign. Here we are. I can change my signer email and signer name if I want, or I'll just hit submit. Remember that this is embedded signing. So up comes the embedded signing ceremony, and it knows who I am. I've done this before. And after we finish the embedded signing ceremony, we'll go back to the launcher. So this is now demonstrating that after you have your web app do embedded signing, you come back to your own web app and you get the information that the person has finished signing. Let's go back to the home page. Let's do the second one. Now, what I also want to point out is when you do any of these workflows, it gives you a little blurb about what the workflow does. It tells you the API method, and you can click on this to go over to the Dev Center, and this is all the details on that particular API method. And also it gives you a direct link to the source of what this example workflow is doing. So in this case here, we click here, and this is the source. And what you want to look for is what we call the worker method or worker function, and that's right here. So here's this function worker, and this goes through the steps of, in this case, creating an envelope with 3 different documents, documents 1, 2, and 3, putting that together, sending it to DocuSign, and getting back the result. So that's what happens when we run this, and the signer email is preset. For the CC, you need to put something in. I'll use that email and hit submit. And what we'll get back is simply the envelope ID, because this example is sending what we call a remote signer via email. And we'll get back the envelope ID. There it is. So the last of these many different examples that I want to show is I want to point out example number 10. It's a little bit different from the others because example number 10 does not use the SDK. Example number 10 shows how to send documents to DocuSign without first encoding them using base64 encoding. When you use the SDK, all of the documents are base64 encoded, which is fine, but it adds a lot of overhead. And if you have a very large document, more than, let's say, 10 megabytes or something like that, then you probably want to send it in binary mode and not have the overhead of base64 encoding. So this example number 10, shows you how to do that. The user interface is the exact same as what we did before, the signer name, the email, the CC, all that kind of stuff. And when you hit submit, everything is the exact same. The only difference is what's happening on the inside, and we'll look at the source here. On the inside, what's happening is that this source shows you, first we go down to the worker, right here, the worker file, the worker method, and this is showing you how to put together what's called a multi-part MIME multi-part MIME request to DocuSign that has all these different parts to it, including the JSON and the different documents, in this case 3 different documents. And the benefit of doing it this way is that you can send the documents in a pure binary mode. The downside is that this is more complicated than using the SDK. That's why we recommend using the SDK normally. But in certain circumstances, you want to call DocuSign and send the documents in binary mode, and that example shows you how to do it. Last thing to say is, 2 last things to say. One is that, as I mentioned earlier, the example launchers show how to do authentication. And so you can look up the details, in this case, how to do authentication using the PHP OAuth 2 client package, and that's built into this demo launcher. And then the last thing is that this set of examples is the same set used in our other launchers. So if you want to see how to do embedded signing ceremony with Java or C# or Node.js or any of the other examples that any other example launchers we have, that'll all be example number 1. And that's in this case PHP. We've got 18 of them, except number 14 we're going to do in the future. In many of the others, sometimes we've only gotten up to the first 14 are implemented, but all this is coming along, and there's already lots of examples to help out our developer customers.
This is excellent, Larry. Very, very good job. Love this stuff. One quick question as a follow-up. For any developers that are struggling to get started with our APIs or SDKs, where would you recommend they get started?
So the first place, if someone has questions, to go is Stack Overflow.
Okay.
And be sure to use the tag DocuSign API, which is all one word. You can either go to Stack Overflow directly, or another good option is to just use Google to search for an answer to your question. We've got over 3,000 questions on Stack Overflow, and so the answer is generally available. If you notice an issue with one of the launchers themselves, or if you want to propose a new workflow example, then you can again use Stack Overflow if you want, or probably better, go to GitHub and use the issues page for that repository. And then also we've got a lot more help for people and information for people. One is the series of webinars that I host called API Office Hours, and you said that you'll put the registration link for that under our video once we have that done. Those are really the main places for help.
Excellent. So as Larry mentioned, if you are interested in the next API office hours, the link to register will be in the description. But if that's all we got for today. Larry, thank you so much for being here.
A pleasure. Thanks.